Hey everyone, welcome back to Gamecasters, and today I'm going to be playing a Star Wars Empire at War mod. Um, this is Clone Wars Fall of the Republic, and it's honestly like a huge overhaul of what the game normally is. With the mode I started off anyway, this is like an infinite campaign um, way of playing. I need to pull up this so I'm not missing any chats. Also, ignore the fact that my screen capture is capturing everything I do on the computer right now. Um, it's mainly because the game capture option for OBS will not pick up this modded version of the game, so I have to use the screen capture option to pick it up. So there's that, but it's not that big of a deal. But anyways, back to it. This mod for the game allows you to play as the Republic or the Confederacy, the CIS, I believe. Um, and with the mode I selected, you start on one planet and you build off of that. I'm a little bit into my campaign so far. I've got five campaigns or 5 planets captured. This also heavily adds in planets that are from the lore. It brings in a lot of legacy stuff, so from like the books that aren't official anymore. There's all the units. There's some new units.
Construction complete.
There's stuff you don't see in like the movies or the shows. There's all sorts of different upgrades and stuff. I do have a few things I've not figured out entirely yet. I'm still figuring out some of the like the political systems, because they kind of put this in like a civilization perspective. Like you actually have a politics thing, so you have your government overview, and if you're playing as the Republic, you can actually choose to side with Mon Mothma or Palpatine. So you can actually stop Order 66 from happening, and you can keep the Clone Wars, Clone Troopers, and stuff like that, all those units, as the eras progress. So I'm in Era 4 at the moment, and if you choose to side with Palpatine, you play from the Republic into the Empire and through the Galactic
Construction
the
complete.
Rebellion and whatnot. There's another mod that the same people who made this one made. I've not tested it yet, which is called Thrawn's Revenge, which gives you more advancement beyond Return of the Jedi. So there's all the legacy book stuff in that, from what I'm understanding from reading the mod description. I will probably end up downloading that next, and supposedly it works side by side with this mod. So you can start from the Republic, work your way up to the Galactic Civil War, which is Empire and Rebellion, and then you move up to what the legacy books originally intended was all that storyline. I don't think there's a mod for like First Order or anything like that. This is a rather old game, but it's honestly one of the best Star Wars games I think they ever made, aside from like Battlefront and original Battlefront, I should imply. The old like PlayStation 2 era games. I guess you can play them on PC too, and they were on original Xbox as well. So, but the original Battlefront games, Battlefront 2 is not too bad now, the new one, but it definitely took a lot of work to get where it is now. But yeah, I'm going to be playing this for a little while, showing you guys one of the more fun strategy Star Wars games that they ever made. Right now I'm kind of short on money. I need to upgrade a lot of stuff.
Building under construction.
Which I think... Yeah,
Building started.
Build defense platforms. So a couple of the text things are missing on the units on here, but everything mechanically is working. So some of the descriptions are missing for the objects, but all the mechanics are there, so everything's working fine. I'm not running any issues. A couple of the units have had a little bit of a weird movement problem, but they don't like become completely useless to where like I'm just not even going to use them. So that's really good. This is probably one of the best fleshed out mods I've seen for this. I remember back when I had the discs to this game, because I'm running it off of Steam, which has the Steam Workshop built in, so you can mod it directly through that. But I remember having the discs for it and having to go through like websites and downloading the files and putting them into the game folder yourself and having to remember where those files are at if you wanted to remove that mod or just completely uninstall the game and have to reinstall it fresh. And I remember creating a lot of problems in the game by doing that. At one point, I think I broke the install location for the game, and I had to get a flash drive or whatever to install it onto, which was barbaric to say the least. But it worked. I'll give it that. It's a small game, so it didn't require high capacity stuff. I mean, we're talking like a lot of the graphics options here are from Steam updating it, and the modders, like the whole menu and everything UI's all been redone. But it's not a demanding game by any means. I could play this on a computer from like 2004 and it'd run fine, which is what I used to play it on. So you could play this on a potato at this point. The only thing I've not figured out is, because I remember in the base game there are hero units you can get, and I'm wondering if for the Republic I have to capture Coruscant, because that would be where the Jedi Temple's at, and then that might unlock like Obi-Wan and Anakin and stuff like that for me to use. But I'm not sure. I've still been figuring out that stuff. The Trade Federation is moving in on Coruscant, so I've got to work my way towards that, because I don't know if that's like a game-ending thing if they capture that. Right now it's just held by civilians, which are yellow planets. Blue planets are the Federation, and red planets are the Republic. And when you start this game mode, you get a random planet. So I actually got rather lucky. I started on Carida, which is only like 5 planets away from the galactic core, when I could have started, way out here and really had to powerhouse my way. But I've got a decent ground force built up. I've got all my advanced factories. I've got a couple of fleets. This is just kind of throwaway units that I just don't care for right now. They're really weak, considering some of the other ships that are in the game. This is my primary fleet. I have a capital ship in it, a couple of smaller capital ships, and then I have some anti-fighter ones in there to guard the big vessels. And the big vessel, the capital ships are producing fighters, so that solves a lot of the smaller ship problems that I've had. So I mean, for having 7 ships in that fleet, I mean, I've not had any problems winning fights with it, comparatively to this one, which is torn apart from what it originally was. I was losing ships left and right. I had no idea what units were good against what, like learning the mod and everything and what was effective. But I think this is a well-rounded fleet, and I've not had any issues. I've not lost any ships from them. I came close to losing one of the smaller capital ships, but I think it was just because I was being dumb and throwing it at everything that came in its way. I was just kind of being pushy with its limits and seeing how far it could actually
Vehicle in production.
I'm going to build a scout. I'm going to stop ranting over here and babbling on. Get a scout going over here to Kamas, or Yeah, Tomas. And I'm gonna scout them. So the enemy's got a very sizable fleet over this planet. So we're gonna go ahead and save real quick since I've not done that yet. Just use my base game name. This is only one thing I have noticed about this mod. Even though I've got a beefier computer, just the mod itself just takes a minute to do things, so I've got to give it a second. This is also the first time I've saved with the mod, so it appears that it worked very well. Probably had to create a file or something to put the saves in, since I've not done that yet, and I don't have autosave turned on. I hate autosave in most games, unless it's like an RPG like Witcher or Skyrim, where I have a lot to lose if I don't save regularly. I could enter a building and then go walking around for the next 2 hours. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the game volume down. I don't know how loud it is on your guys' end, but for me, that just about blew my eardrums out, so.
We got you covered.
Okay, so let's get our anti-fighter ships in a
You got the captain.
group.
Air cruiser, standing by.
Generator. Destroyer ready.
Group everything up. So yeah, every one of these capital ships creates
Provide cover.
fighters,
Time, troopers.
which I'm just going to go ahead and
Reporting.
send those
Changing
in,
course to
because
intercept.
generally
There's no
I've noticed
Union ships in
the
the area. Reinforcements are on their way.
enemy throws their fighters at me immediately. Another thing that this mod does is increases the unit capacity, so I can have up to 300 population worth of units, which each unit's not just one population. Like my capital ship is 84 population on its own, and then these smaller ones are 16. Fighters don't count, and then these are 3 apiece, so depending on the size of the ship, it uses up
Destroyer
more
holding.
capacity. I'm
Adjusting
gonna
course.
send my capital ship, my primary one
Yes,
anyway,
General.
down there,
Raising anchors.
accompanied by these two to give it some
Delta
support,
frigate here.
because it looks like some of their units are going to come around the backside, so I need to have those two ready to cover up the rear. And
Understood.
another thing is, asteroid fields you don't want to fly big ships through, due to when you go through them, they deal damage to your ships.
Score one for our side. No longer a
we need you to clear the area of all enemies.
Good, but it's not over yet. All units deployed. Keep fighting.
Destroyer station keeping.
Nebulas, which are
Good
these
work, everyone.
bubble-looking things that are in the asteroid field, can disable abilities.
It was more units deployed.
So, like, I have Hunt for Enemies turned on some of these units, but it gets disabled when they go into
Falling out of
the
formation.
nebula.
Incinerated.
I think you wanted that other ship over there.
Their reinforcements are being depleted.
Draw their fire.
Set those to guard the capital ship.
Enemy doesn't stand a chance. Have lost. Nice shot, rookie. Aye, aye.
Attack formation.
Close up this
Target
gap
locked.
here.
Excellent shot.
is imminent. Gave him a nudge, did you?
Ready to
Well
update
done,
orders.
rookie.
We got you covered.
Good work, everyone.
Frigate.
I'm not sorry. Our backed-up packs will regenerate us.
Copy that, sir.
Separatist forces have lost. Never surrender. Time to knuckle down. Hold up.
Let's get our fighters back to the fleet. We're
Delta
getting
frigate here.
pelted by fighters.
Yes, sir. Blasting target. Setting sail. Time left.
Delta frigate here.
Go after the stragglers.
Frigate on the move.
Good news. Reinforcements.
Us,
Regroup
sir.
for
Well
another
done,
attack.
rookie. Whew. These are
I feel like I need to build some more anti-fighter ships, because even though they are killing them,
Yes, sir.
some of these larger fleets that the enemy has
They won't escape.
produces a lot more fighters, and 4 of these ships don't necessarily handle all those very well on their own.
eyes wide, troopers. Let's settle a score. Designated target destroyed.
Delta frigate responding. Focus fire on that target.
Charging generator.
Alright, we're about to come across
Sensors picking up an enemy squadron approaching up
Loaded.
ahead.
more
Your orders,
groups.
General.
What is pelting me from behind? Oh, missile ship. You're not really doing all that much.
Did you mean to choose us? For the Republic.
That one's still coming up from the rear.
I can't do that. Over there. They're losing reinforcements.
I'm gonna set
your
my
position.
fighters to
Sir,
defend,
we've lost you on the sensors. We'll hold
my
this
bombers to
position
take
until
out
you return.
that.
Clone troopers reporting. Safeguard that target. Safeguard that target.
I think you wanted that other ship over there. Delta frigate moving out.
Yes, General. As you command.
This is one of the things I was talking about, like the movements are weird. I'll tell them to go in one place, and they kind of split off a little bit. So I have to do a little bit more manual control
No, sir.
when it comes to
Reinforcements are on their way.
controlling some of the smaller
Destroyer
ships. The bigger
ready.
ships don't seem to have really any trouble controlling properly.
Decoding transmission.
This is a battle carrier. I'm sure you guys recognize that from the Clone Wars.
Give me a target.
One of the more iconic ships. This one I don't think was ever actually shown in any live videos.
Destroyer holding.
I'm out.
Aye.
Or live action or anything like that, like cartoons and whatnot. If it
Yes,
was,
Admiral.
I'm probably
On our way.
off
Cannons
on my
loaded.
memory of it, but
I'm out.
Delta frigate reporting in. We can do that.
Destroyer at station keeping. Loading ordnance.
Good timing. Our
We'll win
reinforcements
this.
are
They're coming in
inbound.
quick.
Good timing.
Engines idling.
Much
Blasters
obliged.
charged.
Much appreciated. Target incinerated. Yes, sir. Removed from the equation. Hold your position. Appreciated. Separatist forces have lost. Irreplaceable. Securing location. Reinforcements are taking casualties.
Delta here.
Their reinforcements are taking
Focus fire on that target.
some of the Victory cruisers, which are some of the smaller ones, the Acclimators and whatnot, the ones that they use to like land troops on planets, those are in this. That was what one of my old fleets was made up of. They're
Not much time left.
they're good when used in large groups, but they're not very good for space battles.
Better get your second wind, or else.
Like unless you have a ton of them, and they're expensive to make, so
We can do
it's
that.
not very efficient for managing resources. Comparatively, I built this giant ship for about 11,000, and that sounds like a lot, but considering how much it does on its own,
Focus fire on their hangar. Did you mean to click us?
I actually lost one of my anti-fighter ships. They are producing ships, like fighters anyway,
Lost a squad member.
We've got advanced training. Check your back.
but a lot of their big carriers aren't going to be able to hold out against the bigger ships.
Computer offline.
Sir, there's not much time left.
For the Republic.
Yes, sir.
These anti-fighter ships really aren't doing all that much. I really need to get some more. I need to experiment with some more of the anti-fighter ships as well, because supposedly it claims this is the superior one, but I've definitely had
Negative, sir.
You got the
other
cabin.
ships that were doing
Delta
more.
frigate here.
Reinforcements have arrived.
I'm out. I'm losing
I'm on
it.
them.
Young.
Stay in
But then again,
formation.
this is like one of the largest fighter fleets I've seen on here, so that might be also part of it. But again, I'm still learning a lot of the mechanics for this mod.
All your squad mates have been
So,
destroyed.
Reinforcements are
Delta
being
frigate
depleted.
here.
We've destroyed the Techno-Union ship.
We will try our best.
Yes.
We've destroyed the Techno-Union ships. Much obliged. Ships breaking up. For the Republic.
yeah, we've
Their
almost knocked out
reinforcements
this
are being depleted.
carrier,
Brothers. Separatist forces have lost.
and mine's barely taken anything. Like, it's not even lost its shields yet, hardly any of them.
Yes, General.
The support ships are kind of getting banged up a little bit, but that's mostly from the fighters.
We lost
which thankfully I'm producing a
Charging.
fair amount of fighters to deal with those as well.
Destroyer ready.
Got my anti-fighter ships supporting those fighters, taking out them.
We'll beach them.
Score one for our side.
I have them now.
Okay, so we took out one of the main ships.
Enemy
Yes, sir.
Move this one into position to help take out the next one.
Nice shot, rookie.
You got the captain.
I'm gonna keep these two here because this one is advancing from behind.
Enemy starfighter.
And that's the only downside of having these giant ships is they're really hard to turn around and all their cannons are on the front and the sides. So getting them into a position to fire can take a second, so you don't want to put yourself in a vulnerable position.
Taking fire.
Delta class frigate at your service. Delta class frigate.
Locking on.
We've got secondary
Alright, we've almost wiped out all the fighters.
Commander, they're
They're
hitting
starting
us.
to pull off.
Understood. We're moving.
No longer a problem. And one step forward.
Thor of the Republic.
Smash to
Coming around.
smithereens.
Ready.
Off that fighter. All you want. That'll leave a mark.
Our backed up packs will regenerate.
Look like I've taken a hull damage.
One more for our side.
Yeah, none of my batteries or anything.
Good work, everyone.
That's another thing that
Have been given advanced
is the difference between
That was quite a sight.
this mod,
Gave 'em a nice
the other
kick.
mod, and the base game is that with the base game, torpedoes and missiles and stuff like that go directly through shields and damage components, whereas with this mod, it doesn't do
Been a
that.
pleasure to serve.
The other mod that goes side by side with this one activates that, so that's another reason why I want to get it put on here, because I feel like, you know, a lot of the strategy for this game is based around using bombers to take out key things. So like knocking out shield generators, knocking out engines, you know, slowing down your enemy ships and picking them off rather than just going absolute barbarian into fights, just hitting everything.
That's it for me.
ready for takeoff.
Because normally I wouldn't have my bombers fighting other fighters, I would have them picking off key components, but seeing
Where'd he
as they
go?
don't do that
Yes, sir.
Behind you.
currently, yeah, see, those are just hitting the shields. Whereas if that was a regular bombing run
This is it.
in the base game, that cannon would probably be gone right now.
All crew accounted for.
Union ships.
That's it for me. Nice work. That.
So they got a small ship down here, but that's nothing to worry about. I'll reposition our capital ship.
Delta frigate here.
Did you?
Delta frigate responding.
Smash
Delta
to
frigate standing
smithereens.
by.
Let's keep the
At your
pressure on.
service. Delta class frigate at your service. Delta
Nice
responding.
work. Good
Your
work.
orders, General.
Good work.
Changing
That
bearing.
one fell apart.
Yes, General.
Wrecked. Shot him down.
Striking target.
Wrecked. Good work. I'm not sorry.
How many squadrons can that? This thing can pump out up to 110 squadrons of fighters. Good lord.
Sir.
Nice shot, rookie.
So they're not meant to be used as combat vessels. They're meant to be just fighter spam. Because even my capital ship can put out a maximum of 8. That is insane.
Delta class frigate.
Yes, Commander.
Give me a target.
So far, though, not too bad of a battle.
Firing target.
I lost one anti-fighter ship and have managed to stop everything else.
We should clear the area.
We got you covered.
Let's get all my fighters up here to engage the ones that are coming.
Holding position.
We lost a good pilot.
Enemy units approaching. No, sir. Course plotted.
Alright.
That's it for me.
All that's left is this big ship over here.
Cruising speed.
In a lot of trouble here.
Delta frigate here. Delta class frigate at your service. Delta frigate here. Yes, sir. At your service.
I also noticed they did a lot of voice acting for
Troopers,
this,
prepare for battle.
and there's some reused assets, which I'm not complaining about. Like, they use some music, which I do have the music muted right now for copyright reasons. A lot of it's reused from, like, KOTOR
The separatists
and
cut off our
I've
reinforcements.
got them
the
in my
movies and
sights.
stuff like that. So
Carry
all
on, brother.
copyright,
Carry on, brothers.
you know,
There's no
mayhem
reinforcements
going on if
here.
I was to have that turned on. Sadly, I'd love to have it running in the background, but
Breaking apart. Enemy reinforcements.
Oh, no,
Look
sir.
out.
We've lost you on
Behind
the
you.
sensors. We'll
We'll
hold
have
this
to go
position until you
sometime.
return.
Time, troopers. Look out.
Yes, sir.
Aye.
Full throttle.
Fixing course. On our way.
Their reinforcements are taking casualties.
Destroy 'em.
Failure is not an option.
I can't do that. Sir. We're all set here, Commander.
Get down.
They've got advanced
Charging generator.
and the space battles might
Destroyer
seem
ready.
like crazy right now.
Proton bombs in the chute.
But honestly, if this mod is anything like what base game would get near like end game kind of stuff, you'd have ridiculous amounts of ships because even though I can have up to 300 population on the map at one time,
I don't know how much longer we can hold them off.
I can have reinforcements in my queue, which means
Sabotage
if I manage to lose 300 units, I can just keep
We've done it.
bringing more ships in from hyperspace, and the battles could go on for
Destroyer holding.
ages.
Breaking
Yes,
apart.
Admiral.
But as early in the game as it is right now, I'm not pumping out those kind of units. I'm focusing on more on conquering planets.
Leaving the battlefield.
Delta frigate, stand
So
by.
To the battlefield. Their
it's not a
reinforcements are being
big
depleted.
concern of mine right now, excuse me.
Destroyed the Techno-Union ship.
But
Delta frigate,
eventually it'll hit that point. Land battles will become ridiculous.
Depleting the
Uh,
separatist reinforcements.
Not necessarily
They're gone. One more
as a
barrage.
defender. Defenders can't call in more land units from space. You can have up to 10 different units, or just 10 units in general on a planet. And then the buildings you have built there will give you units every
We've got advanced
time you
training.
lose one of them. It'll repopulate your units. But
See that?
the attackers can have as many units in space as they want.
In a lot of trouble here.
So
We're depleting the separatist
being a
reinforcements.
defender really sucks when the enemy starts getting those huge armies because they just keep bringing in more and more and more.
at your
So as a
service.
defender, you've really got to
We will try our best.
think about how you're going to do your defense.
Target.
I'm losing it. You saved my life.
Destroyer at
You
station
saved my
keeping.
life. Good news. Reinforcements.
Let's go. Sir, there's not much time left.
Ready.
For the Republic.
We've got secondary
A
reinforcements
neat little
standing
thing about ground battles is there's these little build platforms. There's like bunkers randomly placed throughout the map and stuff. So bunkers you can put infantry in.
Situation desperate. It has been an order.
The turret pads you can put anti-vehicle, anti-infantry, and anti-aircraft. You get back to stations, repair stations, and
Destroy the Techno-Union
sensors, which sensors are like one of the most useless things, honestly. It doesn't sound like it would be, but all it does is it reveals more map for you. But in the consideration, I could just send a group of infantry forward and then have a turret built back so it could just fire further. It's more smart to do that because you're getting more firepower out of that turret being there. But yeah, honestly, not too bad. They lost all this, and I lost one cheap little anti-fighter ship. But that was about a 17-minute fight. And like I said, these fights can go on for... I think the longest one... I played an online skirmish, which is just a single fight. An online skirmish is a single fight where you're both put on one map. Not with all the planets, just one of those battles. Each team has a space station, and you build units from that. And I think the longest one I ever had lasted 5 hours, because neither of us could hit the other person's space station. And you can have multiple people on the same team, so it was like a 4v4 or a 3v3 or something like that. And it just kept going on and on and on, just huge battles. And we had so much money built up that every time we'd lose a unit, we'd just build a new one. I think the only reason we ended up winning that one is because one person just kept building large ships and holding their forces back, and then one of us built an entire group of like bombers and sent them in behind the enemy space station and just destroyed them from behind when they weren't paying attention. And it was kind of like, well, did they pull all their forces back to their space station to risk losing, or hope that they can wipe out all the bombers? And as far as I remember, I don't think they were able to manage to do that. So I need to get some anti-fighter ships. You don't want turbo lasers. You want light quad laser cannons. I guess dual lasers are good too. So these are what I'm running right now. Anti-fighter armament, similar to a Corvette. So these only have 2 cannons on them, whereas these have 6. So I should build
Constructing unit.
these instead. That's not the plan that I wanted. So let's pull all these out of the fleet. I'm going to send these over here.
Yes, sir.
They're
Delta
useful,
frigate reporting in.
but not as much as I'd like them to be.
Constructing.
So we're going to go for the cheaper ones, which I think... No, these are the same ones I already have. So what am I doing here?
Cancelled.
Okay, so I've been running these. I'll go ahead and send this over here with them. Corellian Corvettes. Originally, those were some of the best ones to build, but I think light dual turbo lasers, medium dual laser cannons. So these both have about the same. Those are heavy turbo lasers. We don't want that. Don't want that. Well, these have more on them. We'll go ahead and test these out. So these are cheaper to make over here because I have the Kuat build yards. So we'll test this out. We'll try some new units. See how that goes. Because really, right now, fighters are my biggest threat. Bigger ships aren't really being much of a problem. And honestly, if they do become a bigger problem, I'm just going to build more
Choose your
of
reinforcements.
the ships I currently have.
Yes!
Also, a lot of the
Let's go!
the maps for the planets are
Defensive position!
custom-made ones that the modders put in. Some of them are still the same layout, but they modified them with like more scenery and kind of changed locations of some stuff.
With you, trooper. Like
So
we
they
were
really
on
put a
guard.
lot of work into this.
Let's go!
At maximum unit capacity. Turret
Like
constructing.
anti-infantry would be my best bet here for the landing pad.
Support fire ready! Watch those wrist rockets! Kite sweep, I'm going!
Okay, so these are rocket troopers.
Construction complete.
Then we'll put all of our infantry into a group. And we'll get our juggernaut into a group. So far, this has been my go-to land invasion group. Just a ton of infantry and then one main giant support group. Because this thing has anti-vehicle and anti-infantry guns on it. And the infantry are just defense, basically, to draw their fire from the main ship. Because this thing doesn't have shields. It has a ton of health, so it doesn't get killed easily, but as you can tell so far, this thing is just destroying droidekas for me, which normally are awful for infantry. Which, granted, my infantry did take a decent amount of damage, but I still have a lot of them left. Another thing is about land battles, infantry are the key to capturing
Turret constructing.
these build pads and stuff like that. And you have to capture these landing zones because the attackers can only bring in a maximum of
Turret constructing.
10 units. And each landing zone that you start off on a planet has a different capacity. So you could start off with 2 units, or you could start off with 10 units. There is a couple of planets that have the starting landing zone maxed out at 10. Not very many of them. A lot of them you have to pick and choose your starting units really well. Depending on the ships that are in orbit above the planet, you get bombing runs and orbital bombardments.
Construction complete.
Defenders can build these turbo laser cannons, which are anti-vehicle. So keeping big boy over here out of the way for right now.
Gold Squadron commencing
We're gonna
attack.
go ahead and call in a bombing run to take care of that before we move up.
Initiate bombing run.
Yeah, those turbo lasers will absolutely
We've sighted them.
murder vehicles.
Following your lead.
Stick with the plan.
Alright, let's land some more infantry. We'll get some ARC troopers down here. I don't use them very often. I don't have very many of them.
Vanguard, follow me.
The only thing I don't like
Squad stands together.
about using them is
Yes, covering fire. Go.
they're individual soldiers. A lot of them are. And that might not sound bad,
Turret constructing.
but taking into consideration of micromanagement, like managing your units, it's a nightmare. And they're best not like grouped up, so you want to have them like spread out, supporting groups of
Construction
infantry.
complete.
So micromanaging those is a absolute nightmare using them.
Watch those wrist rockets.
Yeah, see, each one of these is their own little unit.
He doesn't like you. We do this together.
So I don't tend to use them very often.
Let's do this.
I will use
There
them,
we go. I've got you.
but only if I don't have a big group
Squad stands
to
together.
take care of.
Stay together.
They are strong though. They get shields, individual shields. They're not super powerful ones. They're 15, and for infantry only having 40 health on those anyway. These only have 20.
With you, trooper.
Bombardment
The
available.
shields aren't like incredible, but
Covering
they're there.
fire. Go. Support fire ready. Watch those wrist rockets.
so I'm just gonna put these into a group, and then I'll pick them out and send them where I need them.
Point sweep. I've got point. For our brothers. Move it. He doesn't like
One big bonus is they get a sprint option, so they can move quicker. They can capture. They're really good scouts.
Turret constructing. Turret constructing.
They still get the take cover option,
There we're talking.
and they do defaultly move faster than
Move your cover.
regular infantry. But again, it's one soldier They have shields,
Construction complete.
and they're a nightmare to control.
Ooh, finally.
Construction
Securing
complete.
position. Spread out.
I've actually not tried creating like a full attack force based on these. I've thought about running them, but I can only imagine trying to control. Like, this is just one drop of these ARC troopers. So,
Turret constructing.
Baseball, move fast.
Mic off.
Construction complete.
Autoguns are online.
Bombing run available.
Form a wall. The squad stands together. Stick with the plan. Together. Yes. Taking Vanguard. You won't be more trouble. Go. I got you. Lock it down. 1, 2, 3. We do this together.
Turret has been sold. Turret constructing.
With you, trooper.
We've secured a landing zone. Construction complete.
Stay together. Watch those wrist rockets. Let's go. Hey. Like we drilled, go! Point sweep, I've got point. Autoguns online. Going in tight. He doesn't like it. Going in tight. On the throne army! Pour out, brother. Move in! Now we're talking! Move your cover! Whew, finally. Watch that covering fire! Move forward! Let's do this.
Turret constructing. Turret constructing.
While. Securing position.
Construction complete.
Yes!
Construction complete.
One, two, three. With you, trooper. Spread out. Watch those wrist rockets. Stay in the battle zone. Stay together. Autogun ready to go. Hey. Stay small. Move fast. Stick with the plan. Together.
Turret constructing.
He doesn't like you. Second Vanguard, follow me! Pass it!
Construction complete.
On engagement! Let's do this. Get this together. There we go.
Construction complete.
Took a while. Stay together! Fine job! Going in! The squad stands together. Yes! Let's go! Support fire ready! 1, 2, 3. All the Republic!
Turret constructed.
All the Republic!
Bombers at the ready. Initiate bombing run.
Like we drilled, go!
We've sighted them.
Stand your ground! Covering fire, go!
Locking on.
We have the upper hand. Hey,
Turret constructing. System conquered.
hey, protect the
Arquentin's
man.
here.
Recruiting. Training troops.
The squad stands
Constructing.
together.
Beginning construction.
The squad stands
Beginning
together.
construction.
Arquentin's here.
The squad stands together.
Beginning construction.
The squad stands together.
Construction complete.
The squad stands together.
Building started.
Arquentin's here.
Construction complete.
Arquentin's here. We're on the move. Arquentin's here. the
Construction
Chancellor.
complete.
Ready
Construction
to face the
complete.
enemy, my liege.
Construction complete. Unit in production. Constructing unit. Vehicle in production. Beginning construction.